Hello there, welcome back to the Closet Historian. Today I have a simple sewing project to show you all. I think I made this skirt in around 5 or 6 hours, maybe all total. Probably could have been quicker if I wasn't filming it as usual, but this skirt requires no pattern and really only 1 yard of fabric if it's a wider width fabric like mine is. So I thought this would be a really quick and dirty, quick and easy project to share with all of you. For those of you who have maybe a length of fabric that you like, but you're not sure which pattern to use for it, or you're newer to sewing and you want a simple basic project that doesn't even require a pattern or much fitting, this is going to be a good project for you. So I decided to share it with you all here on the channel. Some of you may have seen here on the channel, I have a video of refashioning some thrifted finds from a while back where I found this 80s green dress and turned that taffeta fabric into a skirt that I then used for my Slytherin lookbook video. And then I was able to thrift a red taffeta skirt out and about to use in my Gryffindor video, lookbook video. And now I have the other two Hogwarts House lookbook videos coming up. And I wanted to continue the same theme and do that outfit again, where I have my black velvet jacket and a taffeta skirt, but I hadn't found a blue taffeta skirt recently out thrifting, so I decided to go ahead and make one. So I got some blue taffeta. This is a poly taffeta from moodfabrics.com. Not sponsored, but get in touch. So I got this blue taffeta. Even though it's poly, I do quite like the texture of it. It's a nice medium kind of weight. It's not too heavy, and it's definitely not too thin. And so it was actually quite nice to work with and very crisp to work with, like a nice taffeta always is. So I recommend this fabric. They have it over at Mood. But again, this project is really quite simple. So let's jump on over to the blue patterning table of doom and get started. All right, here we are over on the blue patterning table of doom. I have my poly taffeta here. This one is from moodfabrics.com. Moodfabrics.com. I can't speak, but I will put this link in the description of this video if you're interested in this exact fabric. It comes in other colors as well, of course. But I'm just going to be making a knife pleated skirt today with a waistband. Of course, this looks rather exaggerated on this croquis because fashion sketching is weird. But to make this skirt, we don't need to make a pattern. We just need to use some measurements. And it's going to be 3 pieces. One for the front, one for the back, and then a waistband. So we have 2 panels for the front and back of the skirt, and then a longer waistband. And then we'll put a zipper and skirt hook on the side of this one to close it up. So for these 3 pieces, for the waistband, I'm just going to cut a piece that is 32 inches long because I have a 30-inch waist, and that gives me a little bit of wiggle room at each end, of course. And I'm going to cut it that 3 inches wide because that gives me a all finished 1-inch wide waistband here. Because we are, if you imagine this is 3 inches, 1/2 inch on either side is being used up as seam allowance for sewing this together, and then folded. So then basically 1 inch shows, and it's like self-faced the waistband. Hopefully that makes sense for those of you who are new to waistbands. That is, everyone else is like, yeah, we know how waistbands work, but you know, I try and be thorough here. And then for the main body of the skirt here, I'm just going to use the width of my fabric, which I think this is a 55 width or 54. It's rather wide, so I'll just use the width of my fabric along the waist here and pleat that down. And then the length of the skirt, which is going to be, I'm going to cut that at 30 inches. That way I can have a little bit of a deeper hem and fold it up. I'll probably finish it around 28. So use 2 inches of this 30-inch length for the hem eventually. But I'm just going to cut 2 panels that are the width of the fabric by 30 inches. So that should be pretty easy. I might even tear them. We'll see. The first time I ever saw anyone do this, I was kind of terrified. I started working at like a luxury fabric shop, and they tore instead of cut fabrics, and I was so confused. But with a plain weave, you can actually just put a little slice through the selvage and then give it a nice sharp tear, and it'll rip it along the like straight grain of the fabric, but it is kind of terrifying. And I understand wanting to just cut instead. But for something like this, I had no trouble just tearing it so I could have a nice straight of the grain situation going on. And then I did just cut out a strip for my waistband and then a strip from interfacing as well. All right, I did just cut out a 3-inch wide strip. I haven't even cut it down to 32 inches yet, but I'm going to go ahead and interface this waistband as well. And then I will be using a twill tape in the waistband too, just for extra stability, just because this nice taffeta is very crisp but thin. So I just want a little bit more stability up here at the waist, because of course that's the part of the garment that is going to receive the most stress and tension being held onto the waist, like at the exact fit. So I'm just going to go ahead and interface this piece, and then I'm going to go ahead and iron the panels I just tore as well. Sorry about tearing the fabric. I know that probably scares a few of you, but I promise it's actually for the best. Look how messy this sewing room is. Goodness. Need to have a cleaning day. So here I am just serging the torn edges of those panels just because, and the cut edges of things, because this fabric did want to fray a bit. But here I am just going to lay my 2 panels together along the selvage, and this is going to be the right-hand side seam of our skirt here. So I'm just going to sew this one side seam by sewing these 2 selvage edges together. I'm just going to pin along that. I'm going to be ignoring these little fringes along the selvage. Some people might cut the selvages off. I don't care. I'm going to go ahead and sew that with a 1/2 inch seam allowance, again ignoring those little fringes, not including them in that 1/2 inch, but go ahead and sew this side seam, just this one side. Of course, the other side will have the zipper in it, so we can't sew that yet. I'm just going to go ahead and iron that seam open, of course, and then I will pin down my waistband right side up onto my ironing board so that I have a surface to work on here. And I'm going to start pleating this skirt down onto the waistband. I'm just going to pin each of the edges down onto the excess of each side of the waistband. That's eventually where my zipper is going to be going in. But then I have to pleat the rest of this length down onto the waistband. Now my waistband is 30 inches long, my fabric being 54 inches wide. So I have to pleat 54 inches for each panel into 15 inches because we have 2 panels of the skirt sewn together. Each is 54 inches wide, and then half of my waistband, if my waistband is 30, is 15. So I'm pleating these down. I usually just eyeball this, but you could do the math if you wanted to. So here, for example, if we have a 54-inch length fabric and we're dividing it by 15 inches on the waistband, we need to put at least 3.6 inches of fabric into each pleat. And the way to do that for me, or how I did it on this skirt, is to go 1 inch forward here, and then come back 1.25 inches, and then again that 1.25 inches gets folded forward again. Hopefully you can see what I mean by this illustration. So we'll have 1.25 inches basically, and then we have 1.25 inches again because it gets folded over itself, and then that original 1 inch that I came forward to equal 3.5. That is what worked for me for this. 3.6 would be official for doing a 54-inch wide fabric, but I think that extra little bit gets kind of encompassed in the bits of the fold. So this is if you wanted to actually do the math for something like this. You could take the width of your fabric. Let's say you have a 44-inch fabric and you're pleating it down to 20 inches for half of a 40-inch waistband. You know, you could do the math for each of these things. But for me, I usually just will eyeball it and I will pleat everything down how I think it will work. And then usually that first time I will either have too much fabric once I get to the side seam, or not enough fabric to get to the side seam. And that will tell me if I need to make my pleats bigger or smaller. You could do the math, but I rarely ever do, is what I'm really trying to tell you. I just kind of guess it. And it takes me about 15 minutes maybe to pleat a skirt to a waistband like this. So if I did it wrong, it's just another 15 minutes adjustment. So the first time I did this, for example, I think I did 1 and then 1.5 back, like 1 inch forward and then 1.5 inch backwards. But that was too much for each pleat, so I went and switched it to 1.25 inches, and that worked out actually quite perfectly. So hopefully you can see what I'm doing here. I've left the little illustration here of pretty much what I'm doing. Coming forward 1 inch each time, and then back 1.25 inches, and then forward that full length again with a 1 inch from the first pleat. Hopefully you know what I mean, or can see what I'm doing. You can see I'm measuring this with my clear ruler as I go along. I mean, I'm not being super crazy precise, but I am at least trying to measure. You could just eyeball this if you were confident in such skills. Using lots of pins as I go along here. 1 forward, 1.25 back. Pin those down. 1 forward, 1.25 back. Like so. It's a lot of pinching and pinning, this part of it. You could, of course, do box pleats or any other kind of pleating to put this down onto the skirt. I just went ahead and did knife pleats for this time. I think when I made that green taffeta skirt, I ended up doing a combination of knife pleats and a couple of box pleats. I can't remember. I was doing a 18th century petticoat pleating pattern on that other one, and in this one I'm just doing knife pleats all along, all in the same direction. And again, you just want to make sure that that seam that you sewed ends up in the center of your waistband, because that is the side seam and this needs to fall upon the side, of course. Now I'm just taking this over to the machine and I'm going to sew a line of basting stitches along these pleats. So I have the pleats on the top and the waistband along the feed dogs here, and I'm just feeding this through the machine, trying to keep everything straight and nice, and basting it with a large stitch length, basting these pleats down as I have them pinned. That way I can remove these pins while I work on the rest of the skirt, and my pleats are all in place. I know you can't really see this well. Cinematography, not going great for me. Too much floof in this taffeta, really. But I'm just basting along the top of the pleats here. Ah, yes, now we can see. There we go. Well, a little bit. But just basting all those pleats down, holding them straight, zhuzhing it as it goes to the machine so everything is nice. All right, now I'm going to go ahead and pin the other two salvages together. This is the left-hand side seam, for those keeping track. And I'm just going to pin this shut all the way along. But like usual, I'm going to sew this top portion where the zipper will go with a large basting stitch length again, and then I will pull those stitches out once I have ironed this seam. So I'm just going to go ahead and pin these two salvage edges closed again. And then over on the machine, I'm just going to, again, sew that top area with a larger stitch length, and then start over again down where the end of the zipper will be, and start stitching it closed with a regular small stitch length and with a little bit of back stitching up here, and then sew the rest of the seam shut with that regular sort of seam situation with a smaller stitch length and all that jazz. Because of course this will stay shut, and I need it to stay shut. Back over here on the ironing board, I'm going to go ahead and press that seam open. Of course, that's the reason I even basted the top of this anyways, to get the pressed edge. But I will press along the entirety of the seam. Get everything nice and flat, because of course that's what I'll be using to put that zipper in up here. Empire Strikes Back t-shirt optional, as usual. And here I'm removing the basting stitches along the top of that seam again, so I can put the zipper here in the left-hand side of the skirt. So I'm just removing those basting stitches, but I have that nice crisply pressed edge now to work with, and I will pin that edge down right next to my zipper teeth. This is technically the back side of the skirt, and it's the side that will be like hidden in this zipper eventually, so it gets sewn right next to the zipper teeth. And I'm just pinning that along here. Back over on the machine, I am just using my regular presser foot, as we can see, and stitching over that area quite close to, like stitching that folded edge down, or pressed edge quite close to the zipper teeth here, and removing my pins as I go along, or trying to at least. But I'm just stitching this crisp edge down next to the zipper teeth, where it will eventually be hidden by the lapped zipper. Right up to the top here. Just fiddling with everything so I can make sure that nothing's getting out of whack or anything. And sewing up top of that. Alright, back over onto the ironing table. I'm just pinning the skirt to the table so that I don't have to worry about it falling off the ironing table while I work with it, or ironing board. So I'm just going to be lapping this side. Again, I have that nice crisp pressed edge, and I'm just going to lap my zipper over the teeth, or lap this fabric over the zipper teeth to create my lapped zipper here. This is just how I zipper. Many people have suggested I do it differently, but you know, this is what works for me. I always suggest, you know, finding a method that works for you, and with zippers, you know, sticking to it. It's a battle, and we all have to get through it in our own way, you know, it's a journey. And this is just how I and zippers have come to agree with one another. I'm just pinning that area shut. And then I can take it back over to the machine. Again, just using my regular presser foot. I have the needle moved over as far as it will go with this kind of presser foot. Again, I could use a zipper foot, but I'm not gonna. And I just have that presser foot resting against the zipper teeth underneath this section, so I can feel where the zipper teeth are. They're right next to the presser foot, and I'm just going and stitching along that area, which creates a little lap zipper here. And that's just what works for me, you know? Again, just pull the zipper down a little bit to be able to finish the top edge of this while leaving the needle in. And then you can finish the top and come off the machine. Alright, back over onto the ironing board. I'm going to go ahead and sew this waist seam for real, because remember we basted the pleats down onto the waistband before, but now I'm going to be putting in this twill tape here for some more additional stability along this seam, and I will go ahead and sew these pleats down to the waistband for realsies with my smaller stitch length and this twill tape inside. Just gives this whole area a little bit more stability. So I'm just going along the length here and pinning that down, making sure that none of the pleats are getting twisted or tucked in weird ways. I will also be using my fingers and my hands over them on the machine between the layers to make sure that nothing gets tucked up strangely when it's being sewn as well. Back over on the machine, I will go ahead and stitch that using again a smaller stitch length, or my regular standard seam stitch length, not basting anymore, and sewing that down with a 1/2 inch seam allowance. And I am just playing with the pleats and putting using my thumb on my right hand underneath the waistband just to make sure that nothing's getting tucked weirdly. Taking my time if needed, you know. Alright, and back over here on the ironing board again, I'm going to go ahead and press down the 1/2 inch along the top of the waistband here, all the way along the length. Nice thing about taffeta is it holds a crisp edge. It's very satisfying when you press it. Alright, and then here along the end, I'm going to go ahead and fold the excess in here, just so we have a nice, again, clean edge. Pin all this down. I'm just going to be finishing this waistband off, basically. Some people do the rest of this by machine. I go ahead and hand stitch the rest of the waistband from here, basically. But I have to press and pin everything first. So just pressing that down. Alright, and then we can fold this waistband edge down inside to cover up our seam and our stitching and whatever else, and encompass all of that into the waistband. So I'm just folding that pressed edge down along the stitching on the inside and pinning it in place, and then I will hand stitch all this down along that fold and along that seam. So it's nice and clean and pretty on the inside. Over here on my computer desk where I sit to do this kind of thing, I'm just kind of whip stitching the edge of this shut with little tiny stitches. Won't really be seen. And then I will slip stitch that area down along the inside of the waistband here. See what we've got on my desk? We have a dress clip, some chapsticks, lots of thread of course, and a pink tomato, my computer mouse, a camera lens. You can just about see the edge of some lemon candy up in the top right-hand corner here. My desk, it's always messy. Does anyone remember, if any of you are like OG Harry Potter fans who were fans back when the books were still coming out, does anyone remember that website that J.K. Rowling had for a while where it was like her desk and it was messy and you could click on different things and you could get like behind the scenes things about the books and stuff? If you are a serious OG Harry Potter fan, which I'm sure many in my generation are, if you're of my generation watching this, you may remember that website she had for a while. Some serious coding had to go into that, I'm sure. Back when J.K. Rowling was a lot less problematic. Those were the days. Those were truly more innocent times. Now it's time to go ahead and hem this skirt. I'm just turning this hem up a 1/2 inch and then another 1.25 inches, just so that all edges are encompassed nicely here in the edge. Pressing that as I go, of course, and everything. But I'm just eyeballing that. I'm not measuring it all. Welcome to me. Most of the time, when it comes to things like this, I just eyeball it. I don't usually measure my hems because I don't usually have a very strict situation of it needs to be exactly 28 inches long. Oh, I don't care, you know. It could be 28 and a few 16ths. I don't mind. So I'm just turning that up a 1/2 inch and then another 1.25 inches and ironing all along, and then I will go ahead and hand stitch this hem shut as well. So here I am doing that. And look, I've got some water. Wow, hydrating. What a wild idea. Again, I'm just kind of slip stitching this shut. I put long stitches up into the fold of the hem and then tiny little short stitches into the fabric where it will show on the outside. Again, I think the key here is tension, the thread tension. So you can put your stitches in, pull them taut, and then kind of play with it to get it so that it's not too tight or too loose. It's all about the tension when it comes to these hems, whether or not they show. So here I'm pulling it quite tight, and then I'm pulling it back out again so that it's nice and smooth, and on the outside we can hardly see where that stitching is. So I'll just go along the whole length like so. Okay, now that that hem is all sewn in, I'm going to do one additional step on this skirt, and that is I'm going to go ahead and press the pleats all along the length of the skirt. I decided, I mean, it has a nice serious amount of poof going on because of the pleats adding all that volume, but I'm going to control some of that volume by pleating it along the length. So I have the waistband of the skirt pinned along the top of the ironing board of the right hand side here, and then I'm pulling pleats down taut. Now again, I'm not measuring this, I am just pinching and guesstimating where the pleats need to be. Because they will flare open in the end when I'm wearing the skirt, so it doesn't need to be, again, precise. You can be precise about these things if you should so desire, if you are, if you are a precise sort of person, but I clearly am not. So I'm just pinching these pleats down and pinning them along the bottom edge as well, and then I will play with this a little bit, hold it smooth, and press those pleats down the entire length of the skirt. And then I just move the skirt along a little bit. I do pleat again, or like press, I can't find the word pin again a couple of the last pleats I pressed just to start me off, and I'm just, using the top pleat from the waistband edge as a guide and moving my way along the skirt, pinning it down, and then I can press it and it will have these nice crispy pleats going on. Just controlled some of the fullness in this skirt because this, being a wider fabric, again, has a lot of fullness to it, so. I haven't tried wearing this with a petticoat. I'm not sure if it's quite full enough for that, but we'll have to see sometime. Go ahead and press along those. Oh, so satisfying with taffeta, isn't it? Ooh, man. Wait for that to cool, remove my pins, and then I will move along to the next section of skirt. You can see how I have it pinned along that edge on the right hand side. That way I can pull everything tight. And my camera has moved. I must have kicked it. The hazards of doing these things all by yourself, yeah? So this is, of course, I'm making this for my Ravenclaw-inspired themed lookbook, just to keep the Harry Potter theme of this video apparently going. So I have lots of blue projects going on. You can see there's a Harry Potter, licensed fabric sitting here in the basket above the skirt right now. I'm not actually even sure if I'm going to get to that project, even though I bought that fabric especially for this Ravenclaw video, but so many projects, so little time, you guys, It's the problem. I am going to be sharing most of the projects with this video with all of you here on the channel, so I have a lot of filming coming up, and then I'll be able to take a little bit of a break and get some writing done, which is what, of course, I really long to do right about now. Spring is writing time in my brain. I don't know why that is. It's just how it works. The other night actually when I was making the skirt really, I was doing my sewing project this week and didn't really have time to write during the day, and my brain decided that meant I needed to stay up till 5 a.m. one night writing instead, because it was like, if you're not going to write during the day, you're not going to sleep during the night. So either I make time for writing or it finds me. The last thing for this skirt here is I'm just going to sew on a skirt hook along the waistband, and then it will be completely finished. And here is the finished skirt. I've paired it here with just a basic little cotton lace top so you can get an idea what the skirt looks like. But really I've made this skirt to wear with suit jackets or evening jackets in the evening time. And so here it is paired with my black 50s suit jacket, or one of my 50s suit jackets. And then also I ended up making a little top with a slight kimono sleeve, little v-neck top with button back out of the same taffeta, since I had some left over because it's such a wide fabric. I ended up having some of this left over and I wanted to use it up to make a perfectly matching evening outfit here. So here it is with the peplum out. I'm not used to doing peplums. This was a unique experiment for me. And then also with the peplum tucked in, so you can see what it looks like. It almost looks, you know, from far away with a belt on like this, it just looks like a dress, which is nice and versatile for me to have these two pieces that I can mix and match, of course. Of course, I'm planning on wearing this again with my black velvet jacket, just like I did for the other two lookbook videos in this sort of series I have going here on my channel. And I'm happy to now have a shining blue taffeta skirt to add to my arsenal. I'm gonna have a whole rainbow of taffeta skirts after this, or at least, you know, the 4 main kind of color options. So I guess I need to start going to more fancy events where I can wear taffeta, but that's besides the point. I can wear them here on the channel for you. So thank you for giving me an excuse to have more fancy things. Thank you as always for joining me here down in the sewing room, and I will see you again soon. Bye.